The northern winds howled across the fjord as winter's grip tightened around the settlement of Ravnholm. Snow blanketed the longhouses while smoke curled from their roofs, reaching toward the steel-grey sky. In the great hall, voices rose with the heat from the central hearth, where the village elders debated the latest omen. A massive shadow had been seen circling the mountains to the east, and 3 sheep had gone missing from their winter pen. Dagny Dalgaard stood at the edge of the gathering, her wheat-colored hair braided tightly against her head, adorned with small bronze beads that had been her mother's. Though only 20 winters old, she commanded respect unusual for her age, not for beauty, though she possessed that in abundance with her ice-blue eyes and tall, strong frame, but for her uncanny connection to the natural world. The daughter of a Volva, Osiris, Dagny had inherited her mother's gift of second sight, though she kept this knowledge close, like a blade against her skin. "The beast must be hunted down and slain," declared Thorvald the Red, pounding his fist on the wooden table, "before it devours our livestock and then turns its hunger toward our children." Jarl Halvard, leader of Ravnholm, stroked his graying beard. "Winter is upon us. The mountains are treacherous. We cannot spare warriors for a hunt when raids from the south grow more frequent." Dagny stepped forward, the firelight dancing across her face. Her woolen dress, dyed deep blue and cinched with a leather belt from which hung small pouches of herbs and a knife, marked her as a woman of both practicality and status. "I will go," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. The hall fell silent before erupting in protests and laughter. "A woman? To hunt a beast that could swallow you whole?" Thorvald scoffed. "My father was the greatest hunter in our village before he sailed to Valhalla," Dagny replied, "and he taught me everything he knew. Besides, the mountains are my home as much as this hall." Jarl Halvard studied her with weathered eyes. "Your father, Dagfinn the Brave, was indeed a great hunter and warrior. But this is no ordinary beast we speak of." "No ordinary hunter is needed, then," she answered. Before the Jarl could respond, the great wooden doors of the hall burst open. A figure stumbled in, carried by the winter wind, a man, bloodied and half-frozen, his cloak torn. The villagers recognized him immediately as Ivar Zorenssen, a warrior who had left Ravnholm 3 summers ago after a blood feud with Thorvald's family had threatened to tear the village apart. "Dragon," Ivar gasped as he collapsed, blood seeping through his tunic. "A dragon in the mountains." When Ivar awoke, he found himself on a bed of furs, the smell of herbs and wood smoke filling his nostrils. His wounds had been cleaned and bound with linen strips. As his vision cleared, he saw Dagny sitting beside him, grinding something in a small wooden bowl. "So the little shield maiden grew up," he said, his voice rough from disuse. Dagny looked up, her expression neutral though her heart quickened at the sight of his amber eyes she had dreamed of more times than she cared to admit. "And the exile returns," she replied evenly. "Though you were forbidden to set foot in Ravnholm again." Ivar attempted to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his side. Death oaths matter little when fire rains from the sky. Dagny helped him lean against the wall, trying to ignore the heat of his skin under her fingertips. He had changed in the years away, harder now, his face lined with experiences she could only guess at, his once smooth jaw now covered with a dark beard. A new scar ran from his temple to his cheekbone, but he was undeniably still Ivar, the boy who had taught her to track deer, who had once carved her a wooden fox when her father left for his final voyage. "Tell me about this dragon," she said, offering him a cup of mead mixed with healing herbs. Ivar drank deeply before answering. "I've spent these years as a trader, moving between settlements along the coast. 3 days ago, I was crossing the mountain pass with furs and amber when I saw it, black as Odin's ravens but massive as 10 ships. It breathed fire that melted snow to steam and turned my companion to ash before I could draw my sword." His hands trembled slightly at the memory. "I ran, and it pursued, toying with me. I think it found amusement in my fear." "And you came here?" "To warn us." A shadow crossed his face. "Despite everything, this is still home." Dagny rose and moved to the small window, pushing aside the oiled skin that kept out the worst of the cold. The mountains loomed in the distance, shrouded in mist. "I'm going to hunt it," she said simply. Ivar laughed, then grimaced at the pain it caused. You always were stubborn. But this isn't a wolf or a bear, Dagny. This is a creature from the old tales, a harbinger of Ragnarok. She turned back to him, firelight illuminating the determination in her face. Then I'll need a guide who's seen it. Someone who knows those mountains. Their eyes locked in silent battle. The Jarl will never allow me to join you, Ivar said finally. Thorvald would sooner gut me than see me armed within our walls. The Jarl has greater concerns than old feuds now, Dagny replied. And I don't recall asking permission. Dawn broke cold and clear as Dagny prepared for the journey. She dressed in layers, linen undertunic, wool kirtle, and a heavy cloak lined with fox fur. Around her neck hung Thor's hammer, carved from bone by her mother. For protection, she carried her father's Seek's knife and a bow of yew with arrows fletched by her own hand. As she packed provisions, dried meat, hard bread, a skin of ale, Freydis, the old Volva who had taken Dagny as an apprentice after her mother's death, entered the small hut they shared. You seek to confront the fire-breather, the ancient woman said, her milky eyes seeing far more than most with clear vision. I do. Freydis handed Dagny a small leather pouch. Runes carved from the heartwood of an ash struck by lightning. They may offer protection against the beast's fire. Dagny accepted the gift with reverence. Have you seen the outcome of this journey in your dreams, Freydis? The old woman smiled enigmatically. The Norns weave as they will. But remember, child, sometimes to tame the beast, one must understand its heart. Outside the gates of Ravnholm, Ivar waited with 2 horses. He had dressed for travel in thick woolen clothing, a bearskin cloak, and boots wrapped with leather for the snow. His sword hung at his side, and a round shield was strapped to his back. The Jarl has granted me temporary sanctuary, he explained when Dagny raised an eyebrow at his presence within the village boundary. On the condition that I guide you and ensure your safe return. I don't need a protector, she said, mounting her horse. No, Ivar agreed, but even the greatest hunters sometimes need someone to watch their backs. They rode in silence as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape. The forest thinned as they ascended, replaced by rocky terrain where patches of ice made the going treacherous. By midday, they had reached a plateau that offered a clear view of the valleys below and the mountain peaks ahead. There, Ivar said, pointing to a sheer cliff face some distance away. I saw smoke rising from that area. There might be a cave system. Dagny studied the terrain, noting the signs of disturbance in the snowpack. Something large has been moving through here. See how the snow is compacted in a wide path. As they continued their ascent, Ivar broke the silence that had settled between them. Why did you volunteer for this hunt, Dagny? Surely there were warriors eager for the glory of slaying a dragon. She didn't look at him as she answered. Glory isn't why I came. Ravnholm is my home. I protect what's mine. Is that why you never left? Even after, he stopped himself. After you were exiled, she finished for him. Someone had to stay and tend to those who remained. We can't all run from our responsibilities. The word stung, as she'd intended. Ivar's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. They made camp as evening approached, finding shelter in a small cave. As Dagny built a fire, careful to keep it small enough that the smoke wouldn't betray their position, Ivar arranged their sleeping furs on opposite sides of the flames. What really happened between you and Thorvald's son? Dagny asked as they shared a meal of dried fish and hard bread. Ivar stared into the fire. You know what happened. Bjorn accused me of stealing his intended bride's affections. We fought. He died. That's the tale told in the village, Dagny acknowledged. But I never believed it. Bjorn was a better swordsman than you. A bitter smile crossed Ivar's face. He was. But he was also a coward who tried to stab me in the back after I refused to fight him over false accusations. He pulled back his tunic to reveal an old scar on his shoulder. I turned just in time. The fight that followed. I didn't mean to kill him, Dagny. But when a man comes at you with murder in his eyes, you defend yourself. And the woman? The one he accused you of seducing. Ivar's eyes met hers across the flames. There was no woman. Bjorn created the story because he needed a reason to challenge me that the village would accept. Why would he give a roar shattered the night, so powerful it dislodged snow from the cave entrance? They froze, hands moving instinctively to their weapons. "It's close," Ivar whispered, extinguishing the fire with a handful of snow. In the sudden darkness, Dagny felt rather than saw Ivar move beside her. His breath was warm against her ear as he whispered, "Whatever happens tomorrow, know that I never wanted to leave you." Before she could respond, the night outside lit up with orange flame, revealing a massive silhouette against the stars, wings outstretched, serpentine neck arched as it circled their mountain. Morning revealed a changed landscape. Where there had been pristine snow, now great swathes of rock lay exposed, steam rising from melted ice. Scorch marks blackened the mountainside, and the air smelled of sulfur and ash. "It's marking its territory," Dagny observed as they cautiously emerged from their shelter. "Warning us away." Ivar nodded grimly. "Yet we press on." They left the horses secured in a protected hollow with enough feed for 2 days and continued on foot, following the trail of destruction. The climb became steeper, the air thinner. Twice they had to backtrack when paths ended in sheer drops or impassable terrain. By midday, they had reached a narrow ledge that wound around the mountain face. Below them, clouds obscured the valleys; above, jagged peaks clawed at the sky. "There," Dagny whispered, pointing ahead. A massive opening gaped in the mountainside, not a natural cave, but a tunnel that seemed almost deliberately formed. Around its edges, rock had melted and reformed into smooth, glassy surfaces. The snow near the entrance had melted completely, revealing bare stone polished by what could only be the passage of an enormous body. "We should wait until nightfall," Ivar suggested. "Dragons are said to be creatures of fire and sun. Perhaps it will be sluggish in the cold dark." Dagny shook her head. "Old tales also say dragons guard their hoards jealously. If we enter its lair, we need to see what we're facing." She unslung her bow. "I'll go first. Your sword will be useless until we're close." Before Ivar could protest, Dagny had started toward the cave entrance, moving with the silent grace that had made her the village's best hunter. Cursing under his breath, he followed, shield now strapped to his arm. The tunnel descended into the mountain, growing warmer as they progressed. Strange luminescent fungi provided just enough light to navigate by, casting an eerie blue glow over the rough walls. The passage widened gradually until it opened into a vast cavern that took their breath away. The chamber was enormous, its ceiling lost in darkness above. But it wasn't the size that caused them to stop in wonder, it was the contents. Gold gleamed everywhere, coins, arm rings, brooches, and weapons from a dozen cultures lay in heaps and piles throughout the space. Gems sparkled among the treasure, and intricate silver work caught what little light filtered down from unseen openings far above. "By the gods," Ivar breathed. "The wealth of 10 kingdoms." Dagny placed a warning hand on his arm. "Remember why we came." As if summoned by her words, a deep rumbling filled the cavern, not a sound, but a vibration that shook loose stones from the walls. From the shadows at the far end of the chamber, something moved. The dragon uncoiled itself from around a particularly large mound of treasure, its scales black as a moonless night but iridescent where the strange blue light touched them. It was more massive than Dagny had imagined possible, its body longer than 3 longships, its wings folded against its sides like great leather sails. Its head, serpentine yet somehow regal, swung toward them, nostrils flaring as it caught their scent. Eyes like molten gold fixed upon the intruders, eyes that held not the mindless hunger of a beast, but something far more terrifying, intelligence. "Humans," the dragon spoke, its voice deep as an avalanche, each word accompanied by wisps of smoke from its nostrils. "Come to slay me, I presume?" How tediously predictable. Dagny's bow nearly slipped from her fingers in shock. Beside her, Ivar had gone rigid, his knuckles white on his sword hilt. "You speak our tongue." Dagny found her voice first. The dragon made a sound that might have been laughter. "I speak all tongues of men, and those of creatures you have never encountered. I was old when your ancestors were huddling in caves, frightened of the dark. It moved closer, each step sending tremors through the cavern floor. Gold coins clinked and shifted beneath its claws. Now, it continued, lowering its massive head until it was mere yards away. Shall we dispense with the formalities? You've brought weapons to kill me and take my treasure. I've prepared a nice fire to cook you both. Shall we proceed? Dagny felt fear course through her, but something else stirred beneath it, curiosity, and an inexplicable sense that there was more to this creature than ancient tales suggested. We didn't come for treasure, she said, lowering her bow slightly. We came because you're threatening our village. The dragon's eyes narrowed. Threatening? I've taken nothing but a few sheep, hardly enough to sustain a being of my size, but I've been considerate. You killed my companion, Ivar interjected, his voice tight with anger. The bearded man who shot an arrow at me when I was simply flying overhead. The dragon's tail lashed once, sending a cascade of gold tumbling. Yes, I did. Self-defense is not a concept exclusive to humans. Dagny's mind raced. Everything she'd been taught about dragons, mindless beasts of destruction, harbingers of doom, seemed at odds with the creature before her. It was dangerous, certainly, but also reasoned and spoke like no animal she had ever encountered. What are you called? She asked, surprising herself. The dragon's expression shifted to something like amusement. In your tongue, I am Nidhogg. And you are? I am Dagny Dalgaard of Ravnholm. This is Ivar Zorenssen. Nidhogg settled onto its haunches, wings adjusting slightly. Well, Dagny Dalgaard of Ravnholm, since you've not immediately tried to plant an arrow in my eye, which would have ended poorly for you, I find myself curious. If not for my gold, why exactly have you sought me out? To make a pact, Dagny replied, the idea forming even as she spoke it. Leave our village and our flocks in peace, and we will ensure you're not hunted. The dragon's laughter shook the cavern. You? Ensure I'm not hunted? Child, I have evaded human hunters for centuries. What power do you think you possess to either threaten or protect me? Knowledge, Dagny answered simply. I know the minds of my people. They fear what they don't understand. But if I return with understanding? Nidhogg's golden eyes studied her intently. Interesting. Most humans seek only to destroy what they fear. The dragon's gaze shifted to Ivar. Like your companion here, whose hand has not left his weapon since you arrived. Ivar, Dagny said without looking away from the dragon, lower your sword. Dagny, this creature, could have killed us already if it wished to, she finished for him. Put away your sword. After a moment's hesitation, Ivar slowly sheathed his blade, though he kept his hand near the hilt. Nidhogg inclined its head slightly. Perhaps there is more to you humans than I remembered. Come, sit. If it's understanding you seek, I have millennia of knowledge to share. As the dragon settled more comfortably among its treasure, Dagny felt the first stirrings of hope, not just for their survival, but for something far more valuable, wisdom from a creature out of legend. The hours that followed were unlike any Dagny had experienced. Seated on cushions of silk and velvet that Nidhogg pushed toward them with surprising gentleness, she and Ivar listened as the dragon spoke of ages long past, of empires risen and fallen, of stars that had guided its flight across continents, of humans who had worshipped it as a god in distant lands. Why come here? Ivar asked, his initial fear gradually giving way to cautious fascination. The north is harsh, even for a creature such as yourself. Men have advanced, Nidhogg replied, smoke curling from its nostrils. Their weapons, their numbers, the southern lands grow crowded, and humans less superstitious. Here, in these mountains, I thought to find solitude. Until we interrupted it, Dagny observed. The dragon's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Until your kind began expanding into these mountains, yes. I've watched your village, Ravnholm, you called it. Small, but growing. Soon you would have found me regardless. Dagny considered this. If peace between us is possible, what would it require? Nidhogg's tail swept through a pile of gold thoughtfully. I require sustenance. Hunting disrupts your livestock, causing fear. Fear leads humans to violence. We could provide food, Dagny suggested. A tribute of sorts. Sheep, cattle, enough to satisfy your needs without causing hardship to our people. The dragon's eyes narrowed with interest. And in exchange? Protection, Ivar said suddenly, earning surprised looks from both Dagny and the dragon. Our settlement faces raids from rival clans and foreign shores. A dragon ally would ensure our safety. Nidhogg considered this, smoke rising in thoughtful plumes. Interesting. Not worship, as humans once offered, but partnership. The dragon's gaze fixed on Dagny. And you believe your people would accept such an arrangement? Humans are notorious for their fear of the unknown. Not immediately, she admitted. But I can help them understand, as you've helped us understand you. As their discussion continued, daylight began to fade, the blue fungi in the cave growing brighter in response. Dagny realized they would need to make camp or risk a treacherous nighttime descent. You may remain here for the night, Nidhogg offered, seeming to read her thoughts. These mountains are no place for humans after dark, and we have much yet to discuss if this alliance is to function. Later, as they prepared their sleeping furs some distance from the dragon's resting place, Ivar spoke quietly to Dagny. Do you trust this creature? He asked, arranging kindling for a small fire that Nidhogg had permitted. Dagny glanced toward the dragon, now curled among its treasure with eyes half-lidded. Not entirely. But I believe it's sincere in wanting to avoid conflict. And think of what we could learn from a being that has lived for centuries. Or what it could learn about us, Ivar countered, about our weaknesses. If Nidhogg wanted us dead, we would be dead already. Dagny placed her hand over his. Sometimes faith must precede trust, Ivar. As it does between people who have been separated by time and circumstance. Their eyes met in the flickering firelight. For a moment, Ivar's hand turned to clasp hers, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. I never stopped thinking about you, he said softly. In all my years away, through all the settlements and trading posts, you were always there in my mind, Dagny. Like the North Star guiding me home. Before she could respond, a rumble from the dragon's direction broke the moment. Human courtship rituals, Nidhogg commented dryly, one golden eye now fully open and watching them. Fascinatingly inefficient. In dragon terms, you would simply present your intended with the finest treasure from your hoard and be done with it. Dagny felt heat rise to her cheeks, but couldn't help a small laugh at the creature's observation. Ivar, looking equally embarrassed, cleared his throat. And what would a dragon know of human hearts? He challenged. Nidhogg raised its head slightly. More than you might imagine, exile. I have watched your kind love and hate and grieve for millennia. The patterns change little, though the customs evolve. The dragon's eye fixed on Dagny. This one carries old pain like a stone in her chest. And you carry guilt that has no rightful place there. Dagny stiffened at the dragon's perception. We should rest, she said quickly. Tomorrow we return to Ravnholm with our proposal. As she settled into her furs, turning her back to both Ivar and the dragon, Dagny felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with physical vulnerability. Somehow, in the space of a day, her world had shifted, not just because of the impossible creature with whom they'd negotiated, but because of truth stirring beneath the surface of her carefully constructed life. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of fire and flight and a pair of amber eyes that shifted between human and dragon. Dawn found them preparing for descent, packing their few belongings while Nidhogg watched with what seemed like amusement. How do we convince them? Ivar asked as they worked. The village will be preparing for war, not alliance. Dagny secured her bow across her back. We tell them the truth, that the dragon is an intelligent being willing to negotiate. That we've made a preliminary agreement that benefits us all. And if they don't believe us? If they insist on hunting Nidhogg? Then I shall be most displeased, the dragon interjected, stretching its massive wings. But perhaps a demonstration would be more effective than mere words. I could accompany you, at a distance that won't cause immediate panic. Dagny considered this. You would show yourself to our village? Deliberately. From a safe height, Nidhogg clarified. Enough to confirm your tale without sending your warriors scrambling for weapons. I have no desire to harm humans who pose no threat. The plan settled, they bid the dragon farewell with the understanding that it would follow them at a discreet distance. The journey down the mountain was faster than their ascent, though no less treacherous. They retrieved their horses from their sheltered hollow and continued toward Ravnholm, reaching the forest by midday. As they rode, Dagny found herself watching Ivar, the way the sunlight caught in his hair, how his shoulders moved with the horse's gait. 3 years had changed him, hardened him in some ways, but the core of him remained familiar. Why didn't you ever send word? She asked suddenly. In all your travels, surely you could have found someone journeying near Ravnholm. Ivar's hands tightened on his reins. I did send word. Many times. Letters carried by traders, messages entrusted to travelers. None reached you. Dagny shook her head slowly, realization dawning. Thorvald. He must have intercepted them. To ensure my exile was complete, Ivar said bitterly. Not content with driving me from my home, he would sever all connections I had there. They rode in silence for a time, each processing this revelation. Finally, Dagny spoke again. What did the letters say? A small smile touched Ivar's lips. Many things. That I was safe. That I'd found work as a trader moving between settlements along the coast. That I'd seen wonders I wished I could share with you. He paused. That I regretted leaving without telling you goodbye. You had no choice, Dagny said softly. The blood price was set. If you had stayed, I know. But in my dreams, I always found a way to stay. Or to take you with me. The admission hung between them as they approached the outskirts of Ravnholm. Smoke rose from the longhouse chimneys, and they could see figures moving about, more than usual, and many armed. They're preparing for battle, Ivar observed grimly. Then we'd better hurry. Dagny urged her horse forward. Their arrival caused an immediate stir. Warriors who had been training in the central clearing stopped to stare, and within moments, a crowd had gathered. Jarl Halvard emerged from the great hall, Thorvald at his side. You return, the Jarl called. And with both heads still attached to your shoulders. What news of the beast? Dagny dismounted, aware of all eyes upon them. We found the dragon, she announced, her voice carrying across the now silent gathering. And we have made a pact. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some skeptical, others fearful. A pact? Thorvald scoffed. With a mindless beast? Have you lost your wits, girl? The dragon is far from mindless, Ivar said, coming to stand beside her. It speaks our tongue and many others. It has lived for centuries and possesses wisdom we can scarcely imagine. Convenient tales from an exile and a woman who has always been strange, Thorvald sneered. Where is your proof? Dagny raised her chin. Look to the sky. As if summoned by her words, a shadow passed overhead, massive and unmistakable. Gasps and cries erupted as villagers pointed upward. Nidhogg circled once, high enough to appear smaller than its true size, but close enough that its form was clearly that of a dragon. Sunlight glinted off its obsidian scales as it banked and soared back toward the mountains. By Thor's hammer, the Jarl whispered, his face pale. The beast comes to attack. Thorvald shouted, reaching for his axe. Ready the defenses. No. Dagny moved to stand before him. If the dragon meant us harm, it could have reduced our village to ash without warning. It comes in peace, offering alliance. Alliance? The Jarl looked bewildered. What could we possibly offer such a creature? What could it want from us? Food, Ivar explained. A regular tribute of livestock in exchange for protection. No more raids from rival clans, no more threats from southern kings. Think of it, Jarl Halvard, Ravnholm would become untouchable. The village elders gathered closer, their initial fear giving way to calculation as they considered the possibilities. Dagny could see the shift in their expressions, from terror to cautious interest. Only Thorvald remained unconvinced. This is madness. You would have us feeding a monster that could turn on us at any moment? And you take the word of this murderer. He jabbed a finger toward Ivar. A man exiled for killing my son? A man who returned to warn us despite knowing he might be killed for breaking his exile, Dagny countered. And I have spent time with Nidhogg. I have looked into its eyes and seen intelligence, not mindless hunger. The Jarl studied her carefully. Your mother had the sight, Dagny Dalgaard. Some say you share her gift. Do you vouch for this creature's intentions with all the weight that carries? Dagny felt the responsibility of the moment settle on her shoulders. She thought of Nidhogg's ancient eyes, the measured wisdom in its words, the restraint it had shown when it could have destroyed them without effort. I do, she said firmly. The dragon seeks coexistence, not conquest. It has lived alongside humans before, in distant lands. It can do so again, with us. A tense silence followed her declaration. Then, to everyone's surprise, an elderly voice spoke up from the edge of the crowd. The girl speaks truth, said Freydis, making her way forward with the aid of her gnarled staff. I have seen it in the flames. The winged serpent brings not destruction but transformation. Those who embrace this change will prosper, those who resist. Her milky eyes seem to fix on Thorvald. They invite their own doom. The Volva's words carried weight that even Thorvald dared not challenge openly. The Jarl nodded slowly. We will consider this proposal, he announced. The council will convene at nightfall. Until then, let us prepare a feast to celebrate the return of our hunters, and perhaps, the beginning of a new chapter for Ravnholm. As the crowd dispersed, buzzing with excited and fearful conversation, Thorvald approached Dagny, his voice low and venomous. You bring that exile back into our midst and expect us to welcome him? To follow his mad scheme? Bjorn's blood still cries out for justice. Justice was served, Dagny replied evenly. The truth of what happened between them is not what you've claimed all these years, and you know it. Thorvald's face darkened. Watch yourself, girl. Dragons aren't the only dangerous creatures in these parts. With that, he stalked away, hand gripping his axe tightly. Ivar moved to Dagny's side. He hasn't changed. No, she agreed, watching Thorvald's retreating back. And that worries me. The alliance with Nidhogg isn't the only threat he perceives today. You think he means to finish what his son started? Ivar asked quietly. Dagny nodded. We should be careful until the council makes its decision. Thorvald has too much pride to accept your return and my role in it. As they walked toward the great hall, Dagny felt Ivar's hand brush against hers, not quite taking it, but offering proximity that felt both new and familiar. Whatever happens, he said, I'm glad fate brought us together again, even if it took a dragon to do it. Despite the uncertainty ahead, Dagny found herself smiling. As am I, the great hall of Ravnholm blazed with light as night fell. Torches lined the walls, and the central hearth roared with flames that sent shadows dancing across the faces of those gathered for the feast. Dagny had bathed and changed into a dress of deep green wool, her hair freshly braided and adorned with silver beads. At the Jarl's insistence, she sat at the high table, a position of honor that reflected her new status as dragon speaker. Ivar too had been granted a place of prominence, though seated further from the Jarl and with guards stationed nearby, a compromise that acknowledged both his role in the dragon negotiations and his unresolved exile status. He had traded his travel-worn clothes for a clean tunic of indigo, with a silver arm ring that Dagny recognized as one he'd worn before his banishment. As mead flowed and platters of roasted meat circulated, the hall filled with animated discussion. Some villagers approached Dagny with fearful questions about the dragon, others offered bold declarations of how they would have faced such a beast. Through it all, she maintained a diplomatic stance, neither dismissing their fears nor encouraging bravado. Tell us, Dagny, called Geira, wife of one of the village's most prominent traders, does this dragon truly speak like a man? Or does it communicate through some sorcery? It speaks as you and I do, Dagny replied. Though its voice is deep as thunder and when it grows excited, smoke rises from its nostrils. And its hoard, asked another villager. The tales speak of dragon treasure beyond imagining. At this, Ivar spoke up. The tales do not exaggerate. Nidhogg's cave contains wealth that would make a dozen kings weep with envy. Gold from lands I've never seen, gems larger than a man's fist, weapons of such craftsmanship they must have been forged for gods. The hall erupted in excited whispers. The Jarl raised his hand for silence. Let us not forget, he cautioned, that we discuss an alliance for protection, not a raid on the dragon's hoard. Such thoughts would surely doom any pact before it begins. Dagny nodded gratefully at the Jarl's wisdom. As the meal continued, she found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Ivar, who seemed to sense her attention each time, meeting her eyes with a warmth that made her cheeks flush. Toward the end of the feast, when the serious discussions of the council were about to begin, the hall doors burst open. A young shepherd boy rushed in, his face pale with fright. "Fire!" he gasped. "Fire in the eastern pastures!" And something huge moving through the flames. The hall erupted in chaos. Warriors reached for weapons, women gathered children close. "It's the dragon!" Thorvald shouted above the din. "It betrays us already! To arms, men of Ravnholm!" "No!" Dagny leapt to her feet. "This isn't Nidhogg's doing. The dragon gave its word." But panic had already taken hold. Warriors streamed toward the doors, Thorvald at their head. The Jarl called for order, but his voice was lost in the commotion. Dagny turned to Ivar, who had already risen and was fastening his sword belt. "We have to stop them before they attack Nidhogg. If they break the peace we've established, I know," he said grimly. "Come on." They pushed through the crowd and out into the night. The eastern sky glowed orange with distant flames. Villagers were running toward the blaze, some carrying buckets of water, others brandishing weapons. "We need to reach Nidhogg first," Dagny said as they ran. "Warn it what's happening." As they passed the village boundaries, a terrible suspicion formed in Dagny's mind. The timing was too convenient, a fire just when they were beginning to win support for the alliance. "Thorvald," she gasped as they ran. "He would do anything to prevent your return to favor, and to discredit me." Ivar's expression hardened. He would burn his own fields to maintain his power. He would burn the whole village if it served his pride, Dagny replied. They crested a hill and the scene before them confirmed her fears. The eastern pasture blazed, but the fire formed a deliberate pattern, a circle of flames with livestock trapped inside, bleating in terror. And silhouetted against the inferno was a figure she recognized instantly, Thorvald, holding a torch aloft as he directed several of his loyal men. "He's sacrificing our own animals," Dagny whispered in horror. "Making it look like dragon's work." Before they could intervene, a familiar shadow passed overhead. Nidhogg had seen the flames and was descending to investigate. "No," Ivar breathed. "They'll attack it on sight." Sure enough, as the dragon approached, Thorvald's men knocked arrows to their bows. The trap was set, why the Nidhogg would be wounded and retaliate, confirming the village's fears, or it would flee, making the alliance appear foolish. Dagny didn't hesitate. She sprinted down the hill toward the burning field, Ivar close behind. "Nidhogg," she screamed. "Stay back. It's a trap." The dragon banked sharply at her voice, but Thorvald had heard her too. He spun, his face contorted with rage. "Shoot them both," he ordered. "The dragon lovers betray us." Arrows whistled through the air. Dagny felt a burning pain as one grazed her arm. Ivar deflected another with his shield, pulling her behind him. Nidhogg roared, a sound like mountains collapsing, and dived toward Thorvald and his men. They scattered, but not before loosing more arrows at the dragon. One struck its wing, earning another thunderous roar. "Stop!" Dagny cried, running forward despite Ivar's attempt to hold her back. She placed herself between the dragon and Thorvald, arms outstretched. "This is madness. Thorvald set this fire himself. Look at the pattern of the flames, no dragon's work." The villagers who had followed from Ravnholm hesitated, looking from the suspiciously circular fire to Thorvald's guilty face. "She lies to protect her beast." Thorvald shouted, raising his axe. "Stand aside, girl, or die with it." He lunged forward, but his attack never landed. Ivar intercepted him, sword meeting axe with a clash that sent sparks flying. "Enough blood has been shed for your pride," Ivar growled, driving Thorvald back with surprising strength. Behind them, Nidhogg landed, shaking the ground. The dragon's golden eyes took in the scene, the trapped animals, the deliberate fire, the confrontation between the humans. "I see the old hatreds run deep," it rumbled, smoke billowing from its nostrils. "Perhaps I was mistaken to believe peace possible." "No," Dagny turned to the dragon, aware of the village watching in stunned silence. "One man's hatred doesn't speak for all of Ravnholm." At that moment, Jarl Halvard pushed through the crowd, leaning heavily on his staff. His weathered face registered shock at the dragon's proximity, but he held his ground. "What happens here?" he demanded, looking from Thorvald to Dagny. "Treachery," Dagny answered before Thorvald could speak. "This fire was set deliberately to sabotage our alliance with Nidhogg. Look how the flames form a perfect circle, no natural fire burns this way." The Jarl studied the blazing pasture, then turned to Thorvald, who still struggled against Ivar's sword. "Is this true? You would endanger our village, sacrifice our livestock, to serve your grudge. The dragon would have destroyed us eventually." Thorvald spat. "I did what was necessary." "You did what served your pride," the Jarl said coldly. "And in doing so, you violated our most sacred law. You've put personal vengeance above the welfare of Ravnholm." Nidhogg moved forward, causing many villagers to step back in fear. But instead of attacking, the dragon inhaled deeply and then blew a controlled stream of what looked like steam over the burning field. Where it passed, flames died instantly, leaving smoldering grass. "I can quell the fire," the dragon said, its voice carrying to all present. "But the choice of alliance remains yours, humans of Ravnholm. I offer protection and wisdom in exchange for sustenance and peace. I do not offer submission to those who would trick and trap me." The Jarl straightened, seeming to grow taller despite his age. "Thorvald has acted alone in this treachery. His actions do not represent Ravnholm's will." He turned to face the village. "What say you? Shall we forge this alliance our Dagny has negotiated? Or cling to old fears?" A moment of silence followed. Then, to Dagny's surprise, Freydis stepped forward. "The Norns weave strange patterns," the Volva said, a milky eye somehow finding Nidhogg. "Dragon and human, ancient enemies, now bound together. I say this is the will of the gods, sending us a protector in troubled times." Others began to voice agreement, hesitantly at first, then with growing conviction. The Jarl nodded, satisfaction on his lined face. "Then it is decided. We accept the alliance with Nidhogg, dragon of the northern mountains." He turned to Thorvald, who had ceased struggling against Ivar's blade. "As for you, your actions merit death. But blood has flowed enough between our people. You are hereby stripped of all lands, titles, and honor. You are outcast, forbidden to return to Ravnholm upon pain of death." Thorvald's face contorted with hatred. "You choose a beast over your own kind? Over me, who has served you for 30 winters?" "I choose the future over the past," the Jarl replied simply. "Now go, before I reconsider the mercy of exile." Thorvald glared at Ivar, then at Dagny, his eyes promising vengeance. But surrounded by the village and faced with a dragon, he had no choice. Throwing down his axe, he stalked away into the darkness, several of his loyal men following after uncertain glances at their neighbors. As the tension ebbed, Nidhogg continued to extinguish the fire, saving most of the trapped livestock. The villagers watched in awe as the creature they had feared demonstrated not destruction but salvation. Dagny felt Ivar's presence beside her, his hand finding hers in the firelight. This time, she didn't pull away but laced her fingers through his. "It seems we've both found our way home," he said softly. "Home," she agreed, looking from him to the dragon to the gathered village. "Though not quite the one we left." As dawn broke over Ravnholm the next day, a new era began, one where a dragon's shadow over the village meant protection, not fear. And in the heart of it all, a woman who had bridged two worlds found that sometimes, taming the wildest beast required only understanding, courage, and the willingness to see beyond ancient hatred. In the months that followed, Dagny and Ivar formalized their long unspoken bond in a ceremony blessed by both the Volva and, from a respectful distance, their dragon ally. And when their first child was born a year later, Nidhogg brought a gift, a small golden bracelet, perfectly sized for a tiny wrist, bearing runes that promised protection and wisdom for generations to come. For the first time in memory, the northern lights that winter seemed to dance in harmony with the occasionally glimpsed silhouette of a dragon in flight, two ancient powers finding unexpected peace in a world where understanding had finally overcome fear.